And the minutes are approved as edited. And I appreciate, Dwayne, in spite of your attempts, you apparently did only vote once, so that's a good thing. We have time on our agenda for public comment. If there is anyone here in attendance today that wishes to comment on any subject that is not on today's agenda, and I stress not on today's agenda, if there's anyone wants to speak to the board on any topic not on the agenda, now would be the time. And simply come forward, state your name, the community where you reside, and address the board. Welcome. Simply state your name, the community where you reside.
Okay. I'm Charlotte Croix from Deer Park, and I'm here to address the possible closing of the Ag Center in Baldwin. I don't know if that's going to be on the agenda later on or not, but there have been rumors going around that it's for sale, and I guess that is true. You've discussed that here already. And I just want to know a few things. Has this been looked into totally as far as how much money will it really save? And as far as the federal offices being moved out of there, is there something that can be worked out so that they could stay? I know their rent has been increased, either that or they get half the space. There's a lot of questions, and I don't know how soon this is coming up. There's been different rumors going around about different things as far as selling it and locating the ag people here in Hudson. For one thing, Baldwin is central in the county, and it just makes a lot more sense, I think, and so do most of the farmers in the county, that to be able to go to a central place where they have to do their business. You don't have the farms here in Hudson on this end of the county, and you're just increasing inconvenience for farmers, 4-H'ers, HCE members, whoever has to do business at the extension office. My husband, for example, we farm in Deer Park, and when he has to go to Value Implement in Menominee or Baldwin, those are the places. There's no implement dealers here in Hudson, so he makes it all in one trip. He does his business at the ag office, he does his business in Baldwin, Eau Claire, wherever he has to go. And I'm just thinking, if you're going to try to squeeze more offices here in the courthouse here, is there room enough without having to add on and cause more expense? And I did send out an email to every board member, and I had 3 responses. I thank those people that did respond. And one suggestion was, if there were a committee that is looking into this, I wouldn't mind being on that committee, or I know some farmer friends of ours that wouldn't mind being on a committee where you're looking into all of these aspects and before something is done. Another thought I had too, you've got so many terror threats, bombings, etc. You put everybody in one location and there goes everybody if something happens. I mean, that's just kind of a outrageous thing to think, but nowadays you just don't know what's going to happen. So I really would like to do what I can to try to help keep the Ag Center centrally located in Baldwin. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to comment on any subject not in front of the board today? Seeing none, we will proceed with our first annual report, and this is an annual report that traditionally is done in person, and we are graced this morning with the Honorable Scott Needham and his colleagues from the bench, and so we'll invite members of the judiciary forward. And Howard, are you first? Are you the spokesperson, or who?
I'm the youngest, so I get to go there.
Judges Cameron, Needham, Lundell, and Black, and Court Commissioner, Family Commissioner Dunlop.
Okay.
Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, County Board members, and members of the public. As the Chairman introduced us, we are here today to give a report. First of all, it's a written report. I was working on it this weekend and realized his names had changed. I just got it corrected this morning. and I decided to give it to Madam Clerk, and she can use her copy machine, run it off. I did proof it numerous times, so there'd be a few spelling errors. But if you look it over and you have questions, we always encourage you to come up and talk to us. I know that Commissioner Larson has been up there with us, observed me for half a day, see what we do. You know, like in the report, I know it says people think if we're not in court, we're not doing anything. I wish I could say that would be true, you know, but decisions have to be made. Lawyers say, you know, here's what we want to do, here's all your argument, go ahead and think about it, make a decision. But over the past year, I'd like to point out, I think the highlight, as far as I'm concerned as a judge, is that we have now started a Community Justice Coordinating Council with your support. This is something that's starting to grow statewide. You've given us the go-ahead. The bylaws are approved on July 16th. There's a meeting scheduled September 11th and 12th, and we're planning. We're lucky to have a young woman up in the clerk court's office, Jessica Sufer, who has a real interest in this. It sort of does keeps us going on this for the time being. And there's always some good news in the free world today. The good news is that foreclosures are down slowly. In my report, I will note that Phil Helgeson, a lawyer at Anderson Carey, who works out of Prescott, but he said the mediations are still about holding steady. He said people, about 25 since the first of the year, and about half are resolved without people, some will get it resolved and able to hopefully maintain their homes, which I think is still important, okay? Very important. And people come to court, and they're dealing with big people, the huge banks, Bank of America. They need someone that can, you know, sort of mediate between them a little bit. I think that's important. Like I always say this, and politically incorrect, I'll grant you this. The big banks, the big ones in New York City, they don't know where Hudson is, but they probably don't know where Minneapolis is personally. And they forget about the little people of St. Croix County. I think it's important that we have somehow we can try to help these people. And the judicial system, like you said, we have the Community Coordinating Council. Over the years, we've implemented drug court, treatment court, and the foreclosure mediation program. So we're always changing ourselves. The big issue you've seen in the paper lately, we've been dealing with years ago, it's come back up. There's always something new, is that heroin issue. And it's not just St. Croix County, I'll let you know that, folks. I've talked to judges and other people throughout the state the past few months. So we got the same problem here, Howard. And we get the back end of it. We get when people already come here. But I think we have to be prepared through AODA issues or groups, whatever, start addressing this issue. All drug issues. Especially has been tragic in this community, losing young people. And through the treatment court for juveniles, Judge Black would try to head some of these issues off like that. For judges, it's always us, we're getting educated. One thing you're going to see, hopefully in the near future, between us and the DA's office is Compass, which is a research-based risk and needs assessment. They do it in Eau Claire. It's gone over very well there. Instead of us guessing what I think it is, we're now trying to go more research-based, evidence-based. So hopefully that'll be implemented in the next few months, hopefully, I think. Corrections use it already. The problem with that is you get at the very end of the program. They convicted, they're going to be sentenced, here's the risk and needs. We should like to get that earlier when they come to jail, has to release at that point. Two personal notes. I want to bring this up. I want to acknowledge my colleagues. I was out for knee replacement, and I said I'd be out for 2 weeks. If you had knee replacement, that's really not a good decision, 2 weeks. I was out 4 weeks. So they had 2 weeks of full calendar. My colleagues picked up what they could and sent the rest, you know, I got scheduled forward. Reserve judge money in the state is very limited, so they were able to pick that up and help me out that way. Second, I had a big trial, I know, in April. I only see the end results of the cooperation of a lot of people. Everything runs smoothly. I don't have to worry about anything. I had other issues on my mind. But I want to thank the departments, all the departments that are involved. I would name all, but trouble is I missed someone. But obviously it starts with the county board, given the resources necessary to handle something like that. It went smoothly. There were no glitches as far as I could tell. If there were, they weren't there for me to deal with, that other things. But I want to acknowledge the cooperation of all those departments. And that's like we operate, all of us here, on cooperation with all departments. We have a very smooth running organization with your support. I think we do an excellent job. We like to keep that up. And I also want to publicly thank our judicial assistants, the Register and Probate, our deputy, Mr. Dunlap, the family court commissioner, Mr. Heckman, our court commissioner, the staff. We have a lot of mediators involved too, small claims, replevin, and evictions, and everybody else who assists us. So my note was I could say the wheels of justice would slow down. Without the cooperation, the wheels of justice basically just would fall off. Didn't have this cooperation. It's so wonderful in this county. I read the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. All you can do is read that county way people don't get along occasionally, you know that? I don't see that here. So like I said, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to stop up and talk to any of us. We're always open to you coming in. I encourage you to, like Commissioner Larson stopped up. I'll give you a cup of coffee, but he doesn't drink coffee, so he was kind of easy to have up there with me. And Mr. Gillen, I want to also acknowledge Mr. Gillen, who's been corporation counsel and assistant corporation counsel. He does the child support. He and was Liz Roll for a while. It is Liz now, I'm sorry, before that was Heather Wolski. Excellent job working with us. I want to acknowledge his cooperation all these years. I've known him for 20 plus years. It's been great working with him. And Don, as a friend, we're going to miss you personally. So if anybody have any questions I can answer from the floor, or any of my colleagues here? Or you want to say something, Judge? Oh, I was going to mention, besides our other duties, Judge Lundell is the presiding judge. He oversees the three of us. And Judge Needham is the chief of the 10th district, oversees 27 judges, including himself. As he mentioned last year, there's no work relief for him doing that. It'd be nice there, wouldn't it, though? So, again, thank you for your cooperation, members of the board. Get the report, look at it, questions, don't be afraid to call us. I look forward to answering any questions, including my colleagues.
Any questions? Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
You mentioned, trying to help people out. I guess I always think that the court is kind of after the little guy, and so what your comment of trying to help people, that are going to foreclosure, I just found that quite interesting. I always had the other concept that you were there trying to uphold the law, but the law always was on the side of the person trying to, get their house back, or you know what I'm trying to say. Maybe I'm saying this wrong.
No, you're saying it right. I'll make an interesting comment, okay? Politically incorrect. You don't see a lot of small banks there. They go in there, they know who you are, the local people. The bigger you get, the further you get away from reality. And I talked to a bankruptcy lawyer I worked with years ago, and there's all this debacle. And he said, I'll tell you what happened, Howard. They got so far behind on this refinance and all this stuff, they just hit the delete button, deleted tens of thousands of files, his opinion. And that an example I'll give you, I knew a young man, knew his family from Rice Lake. He comes up, and the lawyer on the phone said, the people said never got this information he sent. The guy says, FedEx received 17 days ago at the office they have in Houston, Texas, and now they don't claim they don't have it. That's part of the problems we deal with. We try to, we don't have a lot of power, but we certainly give people as much time as we can, try to help their house, save their house if they can. And I want to point this out, I've done this over the years. The people that come to court are just like you. And here's what's going to happen. We lost my job, Judge. And I know some of these people. They're friends, some of these people I know. Lost my job. I've been very sick. My wife couldn't work. And it gets complicated because I'm trying to think, Al Volz, a former banker, does mediation. Here's another problem. You combine tens of thousands of mortgages, and they're not allowed to reduce your principal. And some of the worst people to deal with, I'm going to tell you, is Freddie Mac and Freddie Mae. They just don't respond to people. But we try to have some outlet they can talk to people. Somehow work it out. Is it perfect? No. But it's better than what we had before, though. I don't know if the judge will make a comment on that at all, or?
Just on a statewide basis, the Supreme Court right now is...
Scott, why don't you come to the microphone so the video feed picks it up for the audience?
Just for purposes of statewide interest, the Supreme Court, I think probably as we are here today, is still considering what to do with their budget. I think you're all aware that they had made a request of the legislature to not impose the lapse that had been originally proposed in the budget. The legislature approved a cut in the court's budget that, as we sit here, we don't know how we're going to absorb. It may involve cuts to counties. in terms of the circuit court support grants. We gave them our best estimate. When we went to them with our budget, they concluded we could cut another $6 million. So I will keep you informed. I've spoken to Mr. Thompson and the controller that as soon as we know, we will report that to the counties. We have a chief judges meeting in September, 2 weeks, I think, from now, so hopefully we'll get some information as to what the court has decided to do. The Committee of Chief Judges went on record to encourage the court to not accept any additional lapse, basically recognizing our independence as a third branch of government, and when we give them our bottom line in terms of what it costs us to operate, to support counties, et cetera. But we'll see where that goes with the Supreme Court. So we'll keep you informed.
Supervisor Rasmus.
Thank you. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, I can't remember which one of the judges were up here, and you told us that your workload was at 4.5. Has that increased, or where are we at right now?
I'm trying to recall, but we just got the latest caseload statistics, and I believe we're at 4.3 as of the cases for we're always a year behind, so 2012 numbers were at 4.3 judicial need. And part of that is statewide criminal numbers are down, St. Croix County criminal cases are down, foreclosures are down, and so with the reduction in cases comes likewise the reduction in judicial needs. So we're at 4.3.
Darrell, just a quick follow-up. Judge Lack, has your caseload with the juveniles and the drug courts, is that going up or kind of holding its own?
It's kind of holding its own. Right now, I think we have 16, 17, or 18 in the drug court. Juvenile has 5. We were originally scheduled for a total of 6 max. I'll be blunt with you. You've got a heroin problem, and I don't have all the answers. But I think whatever we can do to treat juveniles, we should try, because it's a different animal. It's very, very frustrating working with juveniles. But I know there's a meeting in September about that. I attended the community-wide forum in Hudson about a month ago, and it's serious. So adult court, adult drug court, there's a lot of evidence showing that works, and it does. Juveniles, like I said, it's a different animal. I can say with all sincerity, in the 12 years I've been a judge, the most stressful thing I've done by far is the juvenile treatment court. No question about it. So, and again, now that I got this microphone, couple things. I do want to publicly thank Don Gillen. You're a friend, and I think if all of you could have seen him in court, what he's done and what he did, especially in the child support, was just sometimes miraculous. And Don, I publicly thank you. And obviously with some of these zoning matters you handle, but you are a professional and a friend. I really commend you. And Tabitha, I'll take you up on your offer about the court system. Just let me know when you're ready. So thank you. Again, any questions? There's a floor between the first and second floor. There shouldn't be. Whatever we can do to erase that, let us know. We'll do it.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, Mr. Dunlap.
Maybe I
to you.
should, thank you, Chair. Steve Dunlap, I'm the Family Court Commissioner, and I had a hearing already this morning, and this has been a especially hard time of the year when parents who have children going to school and can't figure out where their children are going to school. So I do the family court before the final hearing and then some after the final hearing. I had to change placement of 2 children this morning. And that's the kind of work that I do, and I would really like and invite you to come up to the family court and take a look at it. I want to thank you for the support that you've given my office. We have some new security measures in the office that separates my assistant Brenda from the public coming in, and there have been threats And now there is a separation in my office that allows her to be separate from the public. Most of the people that I deal with are pro se, and they're a mother and a father, and they're not always happy. They come in, and of course, the first person that they go to is my assistant, Brenda. She's absolutely phenomenal with the public, and yet the public can be very demanding, and I think she does a great job. I want to thank everybody for the support that they've given my office. And as of a couple of years ago, I'm doing a lot more child support cases. And again, from my friend and colleague and associate, Mr. Gillen, I want to thank him for the years that he's helped my office, and the amount of help that they give when they come in and say, this is the information regarding the incomes and the placement, so that the decision that I have to make regarding what the child support should be is so much easier. So, Mr. Gillen, we're going to miss you. And so that's, the family cases are about the same. As I told you last year, we have more children born to single parents than to married parents now. And so we have a lot more pro se people coming in, trying to figure out what the placement and custody of their children should be. And we, I think, do a good job at trying to give them the court, give them the exposure, what they want. We try to schedule as many hearings as they think they should have. And I think we do a good job. Thank you.
Any questions of Steve?
Just as an aside, if you've not been up, Steve mentioned some of the security changes in his suite.
Again, Scott,
Oh,
if
thank
could
you
use the
to
microphone, it picks it
Pat
up.
and to Kristen and Building Services. We've done some things upstairs that unfortunately are necessary for security, and the Register's office and Mr. Dunlap's office. Access to the hearing rooms we've changed, again, to make them more secure. It's a sign of the times, but again, something that was necessary, and it was all done and done. Unfortunately, around our schedules, which is not always easy, but they are welcomed changes. And so if you haven't been up, come up and take a look. And then finally, I will thank Don as well. I thought we had an agreement we were going out at the same time, but I'm not retiring, so he got a head start on me. But as the other judges have said, the consummate professional, and when you work with someone as long as we've worked with Don, many times he would come up after hearing, he said, I told the child support worker, I told the mom you weren't going to go that way, but I have to make the argument. And so apparently we're predictable at times, but just, as I said, a consummate professional and a friend. Don and I pretty much grew up together. Our kids are the same age, and we'll miss his smiling face around here and certainly his work for the county.
Everybody else has said something, so I guess I have to too. Don, we very much appreciate all the work you've done over the last several decades that you've been here. So we're going to miss you a lot. Thanks. Can I publicly say a few things about the Ole Anderson room?
You've got the microphone,
All right.
Judge.
I'm sort of the resident historian now around here, I guess, because I'm about the oldest around. But
And no, Judge Cameron's not the youngest, so just.
you're soon going to be dedicating this room, the Ole Anderson, what meeting? County boardroom, whatever. Ole Anderson was the total opposite politically from myself. So I had to figure out a way to work with him over the years. I was a corporation counsel for about 15 years back in the 70s and 80s, and Ole Anderson was the county board chairman for most of those years. We would sit down and figure things out from a sort of a unique perspective. Again, I was much more conservative than he was, and he was much more liberal than I was. But we figured out a way to deal with all of St. Croix County's problems, and we held the county together quite well, I think. And Jill Berkey is here, I know, and she was our county clerk at the time. And we all worked together, and Jill is very much opposite myself, but we all worked together quite well, I think. And that was when St. Croix County was growing at a very fast rate. And so we held things together, but Ole Anderson was a wonderful county board chairman, and would come in every day. I'm sure he didn't get paid much extra from just being county board chairman, but he had just such a unique perspective on the way to deal with things. And you know, I was very sad when he passed away, and I'm very happy, though, now that we're dedicating this room to Ole. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you all.
I think we're concluded. Thank you very much. Board members, I also direct your attention to 2 additional annual reports. They were in your information that was distributed. Make sure that you read those. I would also recommend that you might retain those and refer back to them. If you have any questions, obviously follow up on them. But we do have annual reports from the Register and Probate and the annual report from the Clerk of Court. So we appreciate those annual reports. And did you want to make any verbal comment, Erica? So I direct and commend those to your attention. Chair indicates a certain amount of confusion. There are a lot of accolades that seem to be piling up for Mr. Gillen. Is there something that's going on in your life of which I'm unaware, Don? It just, I'm a little surprised here at all this public recognition. And on the subject of recognition, I would like to call forward Administrator Thompson for purposes of an introduction, and Pat will make an appropriate introduction, and then we will proceed with the dedication of this room, renaming the room as the Ole Anderson Room. Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You know, in retrospect, I probably should have had Judge Lundell do the introductions since he was here during those years, but I'll make this quick. As we've discussed over the past several months, the community room is being repurposed into the expanded emergency dispatch center. And the community room was dedicated to Norman Ole Anderson in 1994. That was shortly after, about a year after, that we moved into this building. He served as board chair from 1968 through 1989, 21 years. I don't know if that's a record, but that's a long stint as county board chair. Someone who worked very closely with Norman Anderson over those years was our county clerk, Jill Berkey. Jill Berkey was elected county clerk in 1982, and she served office through 1989. So she served 7 years as county clerk to the county board chair. And without going into a lot of detail, the staff, the administrative support staff back in those years was probably pretty minimal, pretty slim, and so the county clerk was in a lot of ways the go-to person, probably prior to having an administrative coordinator, and so Clerk Berkey worked very closely with Chairman Anderson over those years. Jill resides in St. Croix County, in the town of Troy. She is very active still in the town of Troy. She serves on the Troy's Park Board. She was an original member of the Economic Development Corporation here at the county. and she was a recipient in 2005 of the Wisconsin Eleanor Roosevelt Grassroots Activist Award. So it gives me great pleasure to turn the rededication ceremony over at this point to former County Clerk Jill Berkey. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Chairman Standiford, County Board Supervisors, County Clerk Campbell, and County Administrator Thompson for allowing me this special opportunity to remember an extraordinary public leader and tireless worker who changed many lives here in northwestern Wisconsin. I would like first to introduce and recognize Ole's family. His daughters Peggy Johnson, Jane Meeker, and Joan Prescott are here, and nephew William Johnson, who is the county board chair in Polk County. I'm not sure if the nephew Gary Anderson is here or not. And there are many people I see and have seen who worked for Ole Anderson, and thank you very much for coming. I wanted to give special acknowledgement also to former County Clerk Sue Nelson, who's here, and also First Deputy Mary Johnson, whom many of us had the delight of whom worked with us and certainly showed us the ropes. So thank you, Mary, for coming. At this time, there are a couple of former county board members who worked closely with Ole, and I'd like to introduce, first of all, Tom O'Connell from Hudson to make a few words. You want to come up?
Tom, we have a mic over here.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, you're up there alone. I wanted to pass by that seat back there that I sat for pretty near 30 years, and I see,
Tom, with all due respect, why don't I ask you to come forward, because that's not going to get picked up on the camera, I don't believe.
I know what?
We want the public to be able to see your smiling face as well, Tucker.
What's about, am I supposed to read this? Anyway, I'm coming really to thank the county board for rededicating just a room to a great, great guy. This guy was a humanitarian. He was, I don't know what party, he was a personal friend, but when he had to be sheriff, he joined the Democratic Party, but he also, you didn't know where he was. But the biggest thing he was is a mediator. He'd go into different rooms when people were kind of having a clashing and so forth. He'd come out, and they'd all come out grinning, and I don't know what the hell he sold them, but he probably promised them the moon. But it was great days, and Ole, you know, was sheriff, county board chair. He just acted in so many ways, and that's why a dedication to a man that his background, he always was telling me about the blacksmith father he had, and they didn't have anything. But he helped, I know personally, so many people different ways of meditating or financially. And AA people that came out and needed help, they called Ole. And Ole found something for him. He got him back in the right track, or assisted getting them back in the right track. But everything that's said about him is really true. So the main thing I want to do is thank the family for coming, but thank this county board for remembering a great guy. I think that maybe if some of you didn't meet him, you really missed something, because there was only one Ole Anderson. Thank you very much. And just P.S., this guy over here, he's got some gray hair, and this one over here, and poor Ole had women around him, and that county clerk on the, just raising Cain. And this lady in the first row here, she had more questions in her life than I ever thought of. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. This is the blueberry lady. See that nice dress?
Among other things. Thank you very much, Tom. Also, Art Jacobson from Woodville, who served as the vice chair for a number of years with Chairman Rich Peterson after Ole passed away, is here and is going to make a few comments.
I was informed when I started here that this would only be a couple of years that I'd serve on the county board, and it turned out to be 18. And I was fresh onto the board, and I was placed on the Ag Committee, or the Fair Board, I'm sorry, and only then hadn't looked closely, and I didn't look closely. Finally, I looked, and it said, you must be a member of the Ag Committee prior to being on the Fair Board. So I called Ole's attention to that. I said, Ole, shouldn't I be on the Ag Committee and be picked from the Ag Committee to be on the Fair Board? He looked at me. I said, you're on the Fair Board. That was it. He didn't take long to make a decision. And we worked with him a few times on different projects. Another one was at the Fair Board. Then we had a building, we had two buildings actually that were old, and during the winter the floors collapsed and all the things that were stored in them had no place to be. So at a meeting, Tom O'Keefe was the highway commissioner at that time, and he said to me, you know, have you ever thought of a joint use building? And I said, no, I never have. He said, you think about it. So I did. And I came back, and Tom said, what do you think? And I said, well, it sounds like a good idea to me. He said, well, let's go with it then. And I said, well, you go with it. He said, I can't do that. You do it. So I went ahead, and we got a consensus of all the committees that were involved with the Fair Board and the building projects, and we ended up, the last committee was the Ag Committee, and they first consented that it was a good idea that we build a joint building, and then they had a change of heart, and they thought that perhaps they would end up, Ole would take the money from the Ag Committee and put it into the buildings. So I had to reassure them, because I had talked with the Finance Committee that that wouldn't happen. But I had to take one of them to Hudson, to the Finance Committee that was going on at the same time, and they assured us that they would bond for that, and so we went back and we came up with, well, they didn't want to do it. Well, he looked at me again and he said, you go for it. So we did. And the county Finance Committee passed it without a dissenting vote, as I recall. I don't think there's anyone here that could remember if I said that right or not. So I can tell them anything, and I don't think you can dispute it, really. But anyhow, we got we needed $140,000 to do that building, and I think it was less than a year and we had the building up. And that was the kind of a guy that you could work with. Ole made a decision, and it was easy to understand what he said. And I found him to be a real fine gentleman to work with, and I was told I couldn't take much more time, so I'll give this up. Thank you for listening, and thank you for all the work that you people do. I have an idea of what you do, and I know things are changing, and I know that they'll continue to change. And I don't know what's going on here with Don, but I'll have to ask him later. But Don and I have known each other for quite a few years, too. But thanks so much for the opportunities, and good luck. Take care of things.
Thank you. I want to give a little background of Ole Anderson. Norman Ole Anderson was born in Hudson in 1918, the son of Norwegian immigrants whose father was the town blacksmith, whose name, by the way, was Ole Anderson. Ole, that we knew, graduated from Hudson High School and attended Rasmussen Business College. With his family, he owned and operated the Hudson Harbor Restaurant on 2nd Street for many years. The beginning of his service on the county board began in February 1965 when he filled an unexpired term. He was subsequently elected to the county board in April 1966, and as recorded by the county clerk J. Gifford Nelson during the April 16, 1968 session, he was nominated by Supervisor Torgerson to serve as chairman and won the election against Supervisor Seza, 23 votes to Zeza's 7 votes. He continued serving on the county board until his untimely death in 1989, serving a total of, what I did in my research was found 24 years, regardless if it was 23 or 24. Yes. Prior to his service on the county board, he was elected to the position of sheriff in 1956 and served through 1960. He served also in the U.S. Army during World War II. Many of us had the opportunity to talk to Ole about WW2 in the hallway. It was a big part of his life. He spent time reconnecting with other veterans that he had met and worked with, went cross-country sometimes to meet up with them. I enjoyed hearing those stories. He also received special accommodation by the Wisconsin National Guard, which he served also until 1963. And the special accommodation was for longevity. He served as the chairman of the Wisconsin County Board Officers Association. He was instrumental in the formation of the Private Industry Council, saw the creation of the Scenic Waterway, as we know today, as governed by the Wisconsin-Minnesota Boundary Water Commission, served as chair under many governors on the Wisconsin Bingo Board, and was instrumental with other community leaders in the development of the WITC Vocational School District. These are among many other accomplishments and public service given by Ole Anderson. During his leadership on the county board, he was very influential in supporting human service programs, including inpatient and outpatient behavioral treatment programs, services for the aging population, programs for veterans, and public protection. It was not uncommon for Chairman Ole to also take personal time to transport a veteran to the VA hospital in Minneapolis, show up at one's house to give support when in need, or give a personal loan. Sincerely, he was that kind of a man, as also told by Tom O'Connell. In closing, as we dedicate this county boardroom in Norman Ole Anderson's name in recognition for his service to the residents of St. Croix County, I would like to leave you with these thoughts. Sitting to the right of the county board chair as the county clerk and observing his role as a leader and negotiator, he demonstrated the role of a peacemaker, listening patiently and carefully to all sides of an issue. He valued fairness regardless of party political lines. He was compassionate for the less fortunate, believed in unselfish pride, belief in oneself, and optimism for the future. He was sometimes described as bigger than life, and that he was. Above all, he was a colleague and friend who practiced a representative government and civility in debate and resolution of issues that impacted many. Finally, it personally brings me great pleasure that the county boardroom here is being dedicated in the memory of Norman Ole Anderson, a deserving tribute to a true public servant of our times. And I would ask former County Clerk Sue Nelson to approach the wall where we have a plaque and photograph in recognition of Norman Ole Anderson, and to unveil, So again, thank you very much for taking the time this morning for this special dedication. Thank you all that attended, former employees, county board members, county board chairs. I wanted to also acknowledge Cindy Campbell, who worked for both Sue and I, and of course is your current county clerk. Thank you. Let's give a round.
Thank you, Joe. We have with us this morning Bob Meyer, and Bob, I'll invite you forward at this point. I've gotten to know Bob in some of the more intimate details of the operations of WITC over the past couple of years in our board appointment process. I've gotten to know Bob pretty well. I'm very respectful of his leadership and the way he conducts himself and the administrative role that he plays with WITC, and so it's a pleasure to welcome him here this morning for a report, and I turn it over to you. Bob, welcome.
Thank you very much. Daryl, I should thank Daryl too. He mentioned the board appointment process, I think, and as the most populous county of the 11 counties that comprise the WITC district, Daryl gets the honor of chairing the board appointment process. And serves in that role with distinction. I appreciate your efforts there too, Daryl. It's certainly indeed a pleasure for me to be here this morning, especially as we dedicate the room to Ole Anderson and his role in helping form the WITC district. And I think he would be happy with what's happening at WITC, so I get to give you an update on that. It's also always a pleasure for me to come back to what I consider my longtime home. I was a resident of St. Croix County for 22 years before this job took me up to the Shell Lake area, having had a residence off Trout Brook Road. And so I have emotions of coming home. I also now have emotions of relief because I didn't know any of the members of the judiciary that spoke to you this morning. I've never gotten to know them while I was a resident here, and I'm proud of that, and I hope that stays going forward. WITC is a very large district. There should be a map in your packet that I gave you, and it should show the various counties, the 11 counties that we serve. I think there's a map in there, I'm not sure, but WITC covers, you can see some of the dots where our main campuses are in the map here. 11 counties, 10,500 square miles. That makes us the largest technical college district in the state of Wisconsin. We have 4 main campuses, one close by in New Richmond, also in Ashland, Superior, and Rice Lake. And then we do some instruction at our outreach centers in Ladysmith, Hayward, and Balsam Lake, where we rent some space. We have over 60 career-focused programs. I think the last time that I spoke to you, we had about 54, which is a couple years ago. And nearly 1 in 9 residents have taken a class through WITC. Some more statistics, and I won't go through all of this, but just to highlight in terms of enrollment by head count, we have a little more than 7,000 students taking credit courses, over 15,000 taking non-credit courses, and you may ask, well, what's the difference? That those credit courses are usually diploma and associate degree programs. The non-credit courses tend to be anywhere from jazzercise courses to really important updates for policemen, EMTs, that kind of thing, emergency personnel, getting upgraded on their certifications. So a total unduplicated head count of a little more than 21,000 people. 92% of WITC's students are employed within 6 months, according to our latest graduate survey. I'm not sure if I put that in your packet. I think it should be in there. We had about 1,600 students graduate from WITC last year, and about 85% of those students, more than 1,400, responded to our graduate survey. That's a very good response rate to get this number of 92% placement. I'll have a listing of the various programs that we have, a little breakdown on a number of credit courses and non-credit courses, almost equal, and the number of staff that we have. Because of the nature of the non-credit work, we have a large number of part-time staff doing those. They may just teach one course, and it may be related to fire safety or something like that. Our courses here, or our programs, I should say, are listed. These are our one-year diplomas and certificates, and associate degrees are listed. The new ones are flagged here. The ones that we've added in the last 2 years are listed. Most of those are available at the New Richmond facility. Another page of that. Several of these programs, like motorcycle, marine, and outdoor power products technician, is a unique program in Wisconsin. So we're very proud of those. And I think I joked last time, I'm still working on the staff to come up with some sort of a program that has a Z in it, so I can say that we have programs from A to Z. But we base our programming on the needs of the community and the needs of employers, so there has to be a demand for us to offer a program. We're very much focused on what we call articulation agreements. That's a fancy word for credit transfer. And we focus at probably 2 different levels on that. We'd like to transfer credits in from the local K-12 system. We're working very feverishly with Mary Bowen Eggebrotten locally to try to transfer courses that students take in the high school, and they get advanced standing with that with their degree work at WITC. So there are about 46 school districts in the WITC district, and we have some sort of an agreement with each one of them in terms of credit transfer. And we're working on expanding that. 34 of them have what's called advanced standing. That is, the content transfers in. Transcripted credit is a little more of a rigorous process on transfer. It has to be certified curriculum. 100% of those classes transfer in and count against a degree program. So there are 2 levels on credit transfer, and we have both at 17 of the schools that we serve. On the other end, once a student takes coursework from WITC, we want to make sure that they're also able to transfer those credits either locally to a university or perhaps even to a national university like those listed at the bottom of this particular slide. You can see that we've got a lot of agreements, many of them with UW Stout down the road, but working on agreements with UW River Falls, and you can see a number of the UWs listed there. The early childhood program, as an example on this, is something that we designed in WITC's district, and that is accepted as a state standard for curriculum, so that will apply at any of the other technical colleges for transfer credit, or at any of the universities that have an articulation agreement with us. So pretty neat. We consider WITC to be a brain gain strategy. You hear a lot about brain drain, but we consider ourselves an asset in terms of brain gain. 81% of our graduates stay in Wisconsin. Considering that WITC borders Minnesota, we think that's an exceptionally high percentage. And it's very near the percentage for those districts that are in the center of Wisconsin. 69% of our students that graduate stay in the district. They tend to get their education locally and stay locally, which is a real advantage. Our goal is to sustain and grow high technology businesses to the degree that we can, and establish high wages and a multiplier effect in the communities that we serve. We also do, I mentioned the one-year follow-up graduate study that we just did for our 2012 graduates. We go back to graduates after they've been away from WITC for 5 years and do what we call a longitudinal study. Why do we do that? Well, we want to find out what was their salary 5 years ago, what is their salary now. We want to gauge the growth that they're seeing in that. This doesn't show you all of the graduates, but it does give you a smattering of how well they are doing. Our 2005-2006 academic year graduates are averaging a 51% growth in salary from 2005 to present. And that, we feel that's very good during a time where the economy really was pretty sour. So you can see that, Pat, I think you mentioned your son is in accounting, right? Our accounting program at WITC. In 2006, way at the bottom here, an accounting grad went out for $25,000. A little more than that, is now making in 2011 $34,000. That salary grew at about 35%, a little more than that. Welding is very hot with all of the propane or natural gas and oil extraction in the Dakotas. Many of our graduates that's where we do have some brain drain. About half of our graduates are staying here in Wisconsin. The other half are headed to the Dakotas because there's great wealth to be had out there. And you look at those salaries, they reflect it. In 2006, the average salary was about $32,000, jumps to $65,000, more than 100% increase. I heard from our welding instructor up at Superior that this year in May, our welding graduates, every one of them that walked across the stage had a job as they walked across, and half of those had jobs in the Dakotas. So gives you an idea of how the economy is working. So we are ramping up, trying to expand capacity in those areas as best we can with the resources that we've got. We want to see ourselves as a business asset, supply a skilled workforce to the community, be a resource for emerging technologies and methods. That means that we need to be vigilant in terms of our laboratories and how we keep those up to date, and also in terms of who we hire and that they have the latest skills that they can share with their students. Providing training and for existing employees, we do a lot of that. As we mentioned, that non-credit portion of what we offer is very important to our community, so we do a lot of that. And the closest facility we have, of course, is in New Richmond, and it has a very nice conference center, so we open the doors to that and invite community members to use that. I should mention we'll be using that conference room in September and October. We'll be going through strategic planning. I came to WITC in 2008 and brought with me from UW Stout a model of strategic planning that is community-based, and so we very much want to get your feedback. If you have ideas, it's one of the things I don't want to forget to mention. If you have ideas, my card is in here in the pocket. Please share your ideas in terms of any new businesses or emerging businesses that you're aware of, or even emerging needs in terms of instruction. That will be very important information into our strategic planning process. We do this on a 3-year cycle, and with that cycle continuing, we're going to do forums this fall in all the communities that we have a campus in. So I forgot the date. I think Kim, my assistant, who Daryl is familiar with, and Cindy is, we're putting a calendar together for that. So I know the first one is September 30th, and then we go into October. I'll get the date to Daryl, and we'll share it with you. But we'd like to see you there. You'll get an invitation letter. All the county board members are on our invitation list. Spread the word on that. We want to see as many employers at that as possible because their feedback really makes our list of programming relevant and responsive, and that's what we're looking for. Boy, that's it. I thought I had more slides than that, but I'll just explain your packet a little bit because there is one thing that I really want to brag about. But I just want to call attention to some of the resources that we've provided. We give you some data on the county and where the employers are, and a little map on that tells us where we need to go for information. We always like to do a little bit of a pie chart for you in terms of what is about 70%, I should mention our budget, about 70% of our budget is supported with local property taxes. About 5% of our budget is state revenue supported, and the balance is student tuition. And so the property tax levy is an important source of support for us. You can see on this pie chart that St. Croix County provided in the neighborhood of about 19.81% of our property tax revenue, And in terms of enrollment, very close to that, 18% of the students attending WITC came from St. Croix County. It's sort of a reality check that I like to do to make sure that our 11 counties are being served in some sort of a represented fashion. I did mention the map. Did you get that? Is that in your folder? Should be there, so you can see it's a fairly large area that we serve. The enrollment from St. Croix County, we have some statistics on all the 11 counties and their participation at WITC in terms of enrollment, and it's steadily gone up in St. Croix County, and I think that's probably because of some of the efforts that we have going with the local K-12 system and trying to create an awareness of some of the great opportunities that are available at WITC. Starting salaries are above roughly $33,000 on average. For the 11 counties we serve, that is at or above the average county, the income in the county, so that we like that for a starting salary. That's pretty good. And as I mentioned, we see good salary growth. There is a little bit of a folder in here that talks about the technical college system. We're trying to get out and do a better job marketing the system because there are just some fabulous opportunities for students with just a 1-year investment or a 2-year investment in their education. They can land some pretty good starting jobs or get retooled into another career. So this is a very nice flyer for you to look at. Nearly 400 individuals in Wisconsin attend technical colleges across the state. You might not have known that. And yet we feel like we're the best kept secret. That makes us the largest higher ed in the state of Wisconsin. You may not know that. And many of the school districts are very focused on preparing their students just for a 4-year option. And we want to kind of dispel the myth that that's the only choice that they have. There's some very good careers that are available with a 1 or a 2-year degree program. Lastly, what I'm going to do, there's some other statistical stuff in there, but there's a nice brochure that talks about WITC being ranked number 6th in the country among 2-year colleges. We're going to need to update this brochure. The last time I came to you, we were ranked number 7. The ranking just came out, and it's based on feedback from our students as well as cost data that the researchers find out about what it costs to go to WITC. We are now ranked, we just found out a couple evenings ago, Washington Monthly Magazine came out with their rankings and we were ranked number 4 in the country, and that's out of 1,200 community colleges. So I think Ole Anderson would be pretty proud of what he had a hand in starting. I think things are going very well at the college with what we've got going on with strategic planning. We're very focused on continuous improvement, and I think that ranking is kind of a nice marker that things are going in the right direction with the college. I should mention that WITC is the only 2-year college in the country that's been in the top 10 ranking in all 3 surveys that Washington Monthly has conducted. So very, very proud of that. Very proud of my staff that works very hard. They're very dedicated to helping students get prepared for their next job. So with that, there's also a little bit on facts at a glance. Tells you about our budget, tells you a lot of things about our enrollment, many of which I've already covered. It does show in there towards the end what the mill rate is, the total mill rate that we charge per $1,000 of property value is about $1.25 if you round it up. That puts us competitively with Nicolay Area Tech Colleges, the 2 lowest colleges in terms of mill rate cost to the district. So proud of that too. We try to really manage our resources frugally. We have a frugal board, and at the same time they're willing to make investments in the programming that's going to help our students. So we're very careful about how we use resources at WITC and very proud of that. You can tell that even though we're frugal, we do focus on excellence, and that I think is reflected in the results of the rankings that we get. So with that, I'll open it up if you have any questions. Yeah, Travis.
It looks like almost every county has at least an extension except for a couple. I was wondering if there's any plan on putting in it, trying to get those last few counties, just an extension of WITC.
I would say no, and I'll tell you why. Brick and mortar is very expensive. It's a very expensive investment. We've looked at Polk County a number of times, for example, and I would say if there's one that we might look at in the future with the bridge potentially coming over St. Croix County, that might be it. But our board is very shy about investing in brick and mortar. That said, just because there isn't a physical facility there does not mean we don't have programming. In fact, most of those non-credit program offerings that we have are not done at a campus facility or a learning center. They're done in the fire halls, they're done in the libraries, they're done in the schools. We squat on space a lot. And so just because we don't have brick and mortar does not mean that we don't have relevant programming for the citizens. So we would rather keep, the physical debt load down and focus more on the operational costs and providing instructors, using that part of our budget to provide instruction. And we'll get it out there. It just may not be at a facility. So.
Anyone else? Questions for Bob?
Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate the time.
Board members, we'll take a very short recess. We'll stand informal for 5 minutes. Staff time. Tabitha is going to need to leave, and we want to get to some financial information. So at this point, I will ask Administrator Thompson to come forward for part of his administrator's report, and including the financial information from Tabitha Hansen. Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we'll skip ahead to, let's see here, item number 1 under the County Administrator's Report, which is the financial reports. So if you can go to those. This is a newly revised form, taking some suggestions from county board members to provide a good summary of the monthly expenditures and revenues by department, and then showing year-to-date monthly actual compared to year-to-date budget, any variance, and then showing the total 2013 budgeted and the percent of budget that has been expended, and showing the same for revenues. And then we also, in the far right column, show the 2012 unaudited numbers and 2011 actual. So you have a historical perspective. I'll let Tabitha address any specific questions, but for expenditures, subtotal expenditures, and grand total expenditures for 2013, budget compared to actual, we're at 49.73, slightly under half in terms of total budgeted expenditures versus actual. And this report is through July 2013, so that's where we should be. And then with revenues, if you flip to the next page, the second page, total revenues of 73.4 million, we're at 61% of budgeted revenues, which is good. But Tabitha, if you want to see if there are any specific questions. Otherwise, hopefully this report is informative. We will continue to modify it and try to improve it based on any suggestions from the board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tabitha?
What I wanted to point out is what's new this month on the bottom of your reports, on your expenditure and your revenue, it shows a Fund 409, which is the land sale proceeds. You'll see it on the expense side and the revenue side. You'll see a Fund 410, which is a St. Croix River Crossing project fund. And then you'll see a Fund 810, which is a St. Croix River Crossing project agency fund. The agency fund on the revenue side is 4.7 million. That's the fiscal responsibility St. Croix County has for that fund. So that fund will be balanced out. It'll actually zero out as we pay municipalities. The 410 fund is St. Croix County's share of that project fund. We'll actually pay ourselves, so I track it separately. just so you can see those footnotes at the bottom. The other thing, I handed out our 2012 audited financials. You got bound versions of those. I handed those out. Those will soon be loaded on our website. If you have any questions on any of that, feel free to call, email, or stop by. Any questions on any of the financials you have? Also included was the 2013 capital. Again, it's through July. A lot of these projects are ongoing and have, especially the remodel, has some expenses that'll be hitting in August and September.
Supervisor Rasmus.
Good morning, Tabitha. Partway down, under the sub total expenses, it's listed as county farm fund. Why have we budgeted $43,700 if we don't have a county farm?
We did the budget last year, a year ago at this time, that was ahead of the decision made to sell the farm. So that was the rent revenue off the land.
Yeah, but this is listed as an expense, and if I look over in the 2012 unaudited actual, there was nothing even budgeted.
What happens is the rent comes into this fund and it goes over as a revenue to offset expenses in general fund. So it was previously when it is an existing farm, it shows up as a revenue on here, but it actually is an expense, but it's a revenue over to the general fund. So the rent comes in as an offset to general fund expenditures. But historically, it's been a separate fund.
Okay, and where did we find that before? Or where would we have found it before? Because
It's
it
been-
wasn't listed separate before, was it?
It's always been this way. Yep, historically going back years, it's been they would budget the rent in this fund, but in the actual, when you pull everything together, when you total it, it's a revenue over to the general fund to offset general fund expenditures.
Okay. And then with capital projects bonding, that $218,000, what was that for?
That is the final payments for our final spend down of our bonds for our 2010 bond and our 2008 bond. We had to fully spend our 2010 bond by April of 2013. So those should remain fixed going forward.
Okay, and with that capital bond, and Mr. Chair, maybe you can help me out with that. We had money set aside for the parking lot up here with part of that bonding, and then when the feds did their walk behind with the state at the nursing home, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we use the money from the parking lot to pay for part of that up there?
I was going to have Tabitha respond to that.
Because I'm curious, and if, I remember they did that, but then there was money coming back for the parking lot somewhere, but I don't understand where that is here.
I can't be responsive to that. I don't.
You're talking about
I don't recall the detail.
Are you talking about the parking lot here,
On the east end.
the front?
Yep.
Yeah, that,
There was an extra 200,000, if I remember correctly, that was left over, or that was sitting up there, and then when the feds did their walk behind from the state at the nursing home,
correct.
we transferred that money over to pay those state bills, is that
There-
correct?
There was some, yes, there was some transfer. We decided that at that point that the front, we completed the back parking lot and the sides, and we decided to put off that portion of the front to future capital budgets. And so some of the dollars were used to make the improvements at the nursing home. I don't have the specific amount of that, but we can get that for you.
Okay, thank you. And then one other quick one. Under Government Center renovations, under capital for 213 on packet page 37. That 340,000, I understand that one. That 12,888 is for what for this year? Does that include what the new wall or the transferring of the window in the door in the admin suite, that flip-flop, and the sound buffering, is that included in that 12,000, or where's the 12,088 from?
I don't have the detail for the 12,000, Dave, but Most of what that is for what's been going on in the back hallway, to relocate the finance staff, and also some of the work that's been done up on the second floor. The judges referred to some of the security work that's gone on in probate and the court commissioner's office. And all that work has been finished now, so a lot of that will get paid out, and you'll see that next month. There was no cost to the door change for my office. Built Facilities did that. There was no cost for that.
How about the sound buffering?
The sound buffering was paid in 2013 out of a different fund, not out of this fund.
So is that paid out of that fund from that letter that you sent me by chance? Or we can talk about
The summary, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, then I'm fine. Thank you.
Any additional questions? If not, then I will ask Administrator Thompson to return to the presentations and recognitions. We do have a presentation on the storm readiness under the National Weather Service accreditation, and Pat will introduce Kristen Saylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The month of September is known nationally as National Preparedness Month. So I think it's only fitting that we acknowledge some great work by our Emergency Support Services Office under the direction of the Director, Casey Swetlick. One of his staff people, Kristen Saylor, over the past 6 months has worked to achieve a premium level of accreditation from the National Weather Service. St. Croix County joins only 3 other counties in the state of Wisconsin as being deemed storm ready. And I will have Kristen Saylor explain exactly what that means. But there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes in the Emergency Support Services Department so that when and if the big one hits, or we get shut down, or there's either a man-made or a natural catastrophe in St. Croix County, our Emergency Support Services Office will be ready to address any and all issues and concerns that are the byproduct of a disaster like that. So a lot of work goes in behind the scenes that you probably don't hear that much about, just preparing. And so that if and when that happens, St. Croix County will be prepared to respond. And so I will ask Kristen Saylor to come up, and she will introduce 2 representatives from Chanhassen, Minnesota, from the National Weather Service, who will recognize St. Croix County as reaching the premier accreditation of storm readiness. Thank you, Kristen. Thanks, Casey.
Thank you, Administrator Thompson and Chairman Standifer. I am Kristen Saylor, the Emergency Management Coordinator for St. Croix County. I'm excited today for this opportunity and to present this designation to St. Croix County. The National Weather Service Storm Ready Program is an application and an evaluation process to complete with representatives from the National Weather Service. I completed and submitted the Storm Ready application and gathered information and the plans we have in place in St. Croix County to present to the National Weather Service staff members who visited St. Croix County on July 9th. They conducted a review of the plans and processes we have in place in St. Croix County and toured the EOC and the dispatch center to observe what we have in place to be ready for severe weather. Storm Ready designation shows that we are better prepared to save lives from the onslaught of severe weather through advanced planning, education, and awareness. We also wanted to provide, because September is National Preparedness Month, we provided you with a flyer and a handout to be reminding all of us to be prepared by making a plan, building an emergency supply kit, and get involved in your community by volunteering or signing up for St. Croix County's Medical Reserve Corps in times of disaster or public health emergencies. I'm excited to introduce Todd Croix and Bill Borgoff from the National Weather Service. They made it here from Chanhassen this morning through the dense fog across the St. Croix River. But they are here to present the designation to us.
All right, thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, Administrator Thompson, board members, and everyone here. I'm Todd Croix, Warning Coordination Meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Chanhassen, and Bill Borgoff is lead forecaster in our office and our Storm Ready program leader. And so it was a pleasure to meet with Casey and Kristen back in July. The Storm Ready program is something that was instituted about 13 years ago on a national basis. It's essentially a series of best practices that we recommend to counties and communities, businesses, schools, others, so they can be better prepared for storms. This includes multiple ways of having, being able to monitor the weather, being able to receive the weather warnings, to relay them to people at risk, offer weather safety education, and a lot of spotter training to the trained spotters that are here in St. Croix County. And there has been a lot of that training being done. So St. Croix County has done a fantastic job in this regard. As was mentioned by Kristen, St. Croix County is just the 4th county in the state to attain this status, the 1st county in western Wisconsin. And there are only 9 cities and villages that have gone through this as well. Fort McCoy, and then some schools and some businesses as well. But just the 4th county and the 1st in western Wisconsin. So I congratulate you on that. I thank Kristen, thank Casey, Janet, everyone involved. It's been wonderful. Many storms have gone through St. Croix County over the years. Wisconsin's worst tornado ever. Back in 1899 with 117 fatalities, far more than any other tornado in the years since. So it's definitely prone. We've seen a major windstorm that went across the county in August of 2007. Just about the whole county got clobbered from that windstorm. Northern St. Croix County back in May of 2008, a massive hail and windstorm across the northern portions of the county. So even though this year's been relatively quiet, unfortunately, there will be more storms. And for that, we are very much appreciative that St. Croix County has gone through this process and is now storm ready. So we're pleased to present this sign to St. Croix County as a symbol of that recognition. The county is now authorized to also use the Storm Ready logo in letterhead, documents, brochures, and on the website. We've already highlighted St. Croix County on our National Weather Service Storm Ready website. And so we are hopeful that this will pave the way for other counties, cities, villages, towns to become storm ready as well. So we are very pleased at St. Croix County becoming a member of the Storm Ready family, and thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you, Janet. Any questions for the representatives or for Kristen from any of the board members? I just might, Dave, I'm going to come right to you. I just might say I feel a bit of affinity for the Weather Service. Some of you may know where that's located in Chanhassen, just south of Highway 5, just east of the new high school. The affinity is that my oldest son and his family live just 4 blocks from there. And now a trivia question. That school district used to be the Chanhassen Chaska School District, and a new high school was built in Chanhassen just a few years ago. I have a grandson that will be a senior there this fall, and here's the trivia question. It is now the Chanhassen fill in the blank. What's the mascot? The Chanhassen Storm.
Go Storm!
I don't know how you get real excited about cheering for your team when you're cheering for the Storm, but it's the Chanhassen Storm. Supervisor Osnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Todd, I'd like to first of all, thank you and your office for the outstanding work that you folks do in getting warnings out to everybody. It's not easy, I'm sure, but we do appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you. And we really couldn't do it without the people that live here locally and that work here locally. We can put out all the warnings we want, but unless those warnings are received properly and the education that's done locally, without that, it's a whole team approach. It really is. And so I really do appreciate everything that the Emergency Support Services have been doing for St. Croix County. I really do.
And a follow-up, Mr. Chair, if I may. Kristen, now that we're storm ready, and you talked about it a little bit at public protection, can you kind of give us an update with the storms that went through in late June? And with the declaration that Governor Walker had sent out, I know FEMA's been here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, August 8th, the president approved a federal disaster declaration for the state of Wisconsin, including St. Croix County. It was approved for public assistance, which is for infrastructure damage. We had severe storms and flooding come through on June 20th through the 28th. And I've been meeting with the towns, villages, and the cities that were affected, trying to help them organize their documentation and from the damages that they received. We've documented over $800,000 in damages, and we were part of the state submittal to FEMA for the disaster declaration. So now FEMA was declared on August 8th, and they have come back now, and they'll be here for the next 60 or plus days. And they're meeting with all of the affected communities, which include 2 cities, the village of North Hudson, the cities of Hudson and New Richmond, 8 towns, 3 school districts, and then St. Croix County Highway, Sheriff's Office, Parks, and Emergency Support Services. And the funding that is being provided will reimburse 75% federal funding, 12.5% state funding, and 12.5% local funding. And it's because of that federal disaster declaration that it will be able to be reimbursed from FEMA. So that's the current update.
Is that responsive to your question, Supervisor?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions for Kristen? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Administrator Thompson, let's return to your report and let's move into the strategic plan update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will skip item number 4 under presentations and move that towards the end of the meeting. I'd like to take your attention to item number 2 under the County Administrator's report, which is an update on the citizen survey, which was part of the strategic planning effort that is ongoing at St. Croix County in terms of updating the strategic plan, which was approved by the board in March of 2012. We undertook a citizen survey in January of 2013. We engaged the services of the Survey Research Center at the UW River Falls, and working with Jim Janke and Pete Kling from the UW Extension Office, we conducted a survey. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Jim Janke, Pete Kling, who will briefly walk us through the survey results, what they mean, and how we can use that information to continue to make our strategic planning work relevant for the county. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I just have a couple of opening remarks regarding the strategic planning work that we've been working on here in the county for the last number of years. I think it's always good to sometimes stop and just take a look around and remember and take credit for the work that has been done. A lot of which this board and a number of staff members have worked on. So if you recall, in 2010, we turned what had been an event, strategic planning or goal-setting day, we turned that event into more of a process. And strategic planning really is about a process and revisiting the goals and the objectives that you approve. And so that process then was built upon when Administrator Thompson came on board, put together a committee of staff members and worked on a strategic plan. And we developed, with your help, a strategic plan that was approved in 2012. It had county priorities, and then those priority areas were then worked on by staff. And it worked its way down into the organization, which I think was a huge step, at least for St. Croix County, that had not been done before. That process, though, was fairly internal. It was looking at ourselves and looking at the work and the relationships that we have internally. The citizen survey now takes another step and talks about external pieces. We need to hear and we need to ask about the services that are provided and the perceptions and the ideas that people have, those that we serve. And so that's really what the citizen survey is meant to do. That information then was used to update the existing strategic plan. So much of this information all of it was reviewed and was used to update the current strategic plan by the strategic planning committee. So I just wanted to go through that brief history lesson just to show you and to remind you some of the context of how this has come to pass. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Jim Janke, and I'll just kind of hang here in the back for any questions afterwards.
Forward. Okay, very good. Good morning. And it's sort of a little bit of deja vu all over again for me, because I used to work for St. Croix County for a number of years, and it's a pleasure to be back. I will, if you don't mind, take about 15 seconds of indulgence to talk about Norman Ole Anderson. I owe him a personal debt because he was on the committee that hired me, and so he helped launch me to my 30 years of work with the UW Extension Office for St. Croix County. And one short story. Day one, June 28th, 1976, I go walking into the office. There's a note on my desk that says, "Ole wants you at a meeting at the Public Health Office in Hammond at 11 o'clock. And Sue Nelson, who's not here now, but Sue was secretarial support staff at that point, and I went out in my naivete. I knew Norman Anderson, but I saw this Ole. I go, "Who's Ole?" I learned who Ole was, and Ole was a great supporter, and he, on a personal level, helped me find a place to live when I was hired. So I have a lot of fond memories of Ole. Well, on to the survey, and we worked with Pete and with other folks behind the scenes, but I need to acknowledge Pete and Kristen Ziliak for being sort of our contact people here, working on this project and getting it to the point where we could talk about survey content. And you ask us to look at 36 programs and services and to do 2 scales on those, to ask the residents
the current importance of these programs and services, each of the 36, on a scale of somewhat, or very important, somewhat not important, or don't know. And then the second scale was, what would you like to see the spending level be like in 2018? Increase, not change, decrease, or don't know. The process that we followed was a random sample survey to 1,149 households in the county. We followed that up 2 weeks later with a reminder postcard to those who had not yet responded. 2 weeks after that, we sent a second mailing, complete with another blank survey, a cover letter explaining the importance of this, that you're one of a relatively small sample of households in the county. And in total, we received 388 returns, 34%, which is right on target. We plan on a third, so we got a third plus a few. And that gives us plus or minus 5% margin of error. We're 95% confident with that, which means 95 times out of 100, we think that the survey results would be within plus or minus 5%. We asked some demographic questions of the respondents. 64% were men, 76% were over age 45. 2/3 were currently employed or self-employed. Slightly over a third had a 4-year degree or higher. 47% were long-term residents of the county, at least 25 years. 95% were homeowners. Geographic breakdown, a little over half from towns, a little over a quarter from cities, and about 1 out of 5 from villages. We asked about household income, and not to our surprise, but most people answered this question. We get some feedback from prospective clients, oh, we don't want to ask about income because we don't think people are going to provide that. We see very little drop-off with that. We see not quite half had household incomes of $75,000 or more. We ask people to indicate their zip code. The top 5 sort of represent the geographic distribution of households in the county. 39% had a 54016. About 1 in 5 are from New Richmond, about 10% from River Falls, and 7% from Somerset, 5% from Roberts, and then smaller amounts from some of the other zip codes in the county. Well, on to results. My strategy here is to talk sort of broad scale at first and try to give you some summary overview of this. I think you have the report in your packets, I understand. So all of the details that I will talk about a little bit later in slightly a lighter fashion are going to be in there. So I'm sort of start out broad and funnel down a little bit without, I hope, too much detail at the end, because you do have that, and I recognize we have a limited time. So as we look at this overview, here's the importance scale. Here's the average across all 36 on the importance scale. And you can see by far the largest chunk said these on average, all of these 36, about 46% said they are somewhat important. About a third said they are very important. A smaller amount said they are not important, and relatively few said they don't know. So of all of the services that are listed on there, at least half of the people said that they were important or very important or somewhat important. And 6 of the 36 that were on there were rated as very important by at least half the people. Whoops. So again, the biggest chunk is in here. You combine these together. Your residents are saying most of what the programs and services that were on this survey are at least somewhat important. Now, looking at spending, you see a big chunk here that corresponds to wanting to keep the current level about the same in 2018. 1 in 5 said that they wanted to see an increase, decrease 14%, and a little bit more, 11%, compared to the 5% we had up here. So again, looking at the spending combination, the biggest chunk, half, want to keep things pretty much the same as what they were. In fact, on 34 of those 36 programs that were offered, the biggest chunk of people said they wanted to see no change. We took the data and tried to make a visual here that would be sort of try to represent an overview of this. We created this matrix, and down on the bottom, oops, I keep hitting the wrong button, I'm sorry about that. Down the bottom here we have a scale of importance, and over here we have a scale of spending. And the scales run from 0 to 2 in either direction. And a 2 represents, for importance, that means very important, and on spending it means increase. So at the very extremes, we'd have up here in the upper right-hand corner, very important and increased spending. That'd be a combination of 2 and 2. And down here would be not important and decreased spending. And so we plotted these on, we gave some point scores. So 2 points for very important, as I said before, 0 points for not important, and for decreased spending and for increased spending. And then plotted that combination on here. And I don't have all of the labels on this simply because there just physically wasn't room to do that. But this gives you a general idea of sort of the slope. You've got up here would be the ones where are deemed more important and more likely to want to see increased spending, and down here the opposite of that, less important and more folks saying decreasing spending. The important thing on here that I want to take away, we're going to get into some of the details about some of these numbers in a second, but the important thing on here is sort of the slope of this. In general, if you think something, the respondent said, if we think something is a little more important, then we're also more interested in seeing increased spending. On the opposite end, down here, if we see things that are less important, then we're more likely to say we would have decreased spending. So the slope is sort of consistent. Increased importance, increased spending, decreased spending. So it's a positive slope. It's fairly well spread out, so that you don't have everything clumped around the middle. Well, here's some of the detail. And what I've done here is rank these in order of importance. So you can see there's a column here that has the rank. So it starts, the ranking starts out with what's the most important. And then we have the spending rank in numbers over here. For the sake of trying to keep things from getting too small and being too dense on the screen, I've not included the other two choices here. So we got very and somewhat important, and we don't have the other two categories for not important or don't know, or on the spending level for decrease or don't know. So starting out sort of at the top here, we have this one sort of stands out at the top. It's the only one, that's why this is circle, it's the only one for which there was a majority of folks who said they want to see increased spending. The only one. And it ranked first in both importance and spending, and over 70% of the respondents said that is very, very important. A fairly substantial drop-off then to the next items. Timely response to emergencies, which I guess sort of consistent with what we just saw up here preceding my presentation, some emergency preparedness. But again, we see these numbers here where there's over half in these numbers or in close to half here for these products, or for these services and programs that are viewed as very important. There's a pretty good rank correlation. Number one, number one, 2 to 3, 3 to 2, and there's a few places where there's you'll see in the report, we have a chart in there. There's a few places in there where there's some larger differences, but for the most part, again, because of the sort of upward slope of that matrix chart that I showed you on the previous slide, these two sort of tend to go along with each other. So these are the top 7 or so, and you can see that well over half combined think that is at least somewhat important. Moving on to the next one, we've got a group here that are start out in the 40s as being very important. These numbers tend to increase slightly. As these numbers decrease, we're down to the 14th point here, and that they're about a third on these particular programs and services. Moving through, again, pretty much the same pattern here as we have the importance rating starting to go down, but still holding fairly well over here in the somewhat important category. And spending, again, as we saw before, the largest chunk of folks pretty much want to keep things as they are, with relatively few exceptions. I'll give you just a second to look at that. I would point out that, again, the somewhat importance are holding up around the half in most of these, and the very importance are starting to decrease somewhat. Spending levels pretty much keep them the same, and some of these numbers are getting even bigger majorities, getting up over to 2/3. And then the last one, again, we still see the somewhat being the largest one, the very numbers starting to get relatively smaller compared to where we were before. Spending, we're seeing some more no change, or the no change is about the same for most of those. At the end of the survey, we ask an open-ended question. Put a blank space in there and said, what do you want to tell us? And on this, about a third of the respondents actually took the time to fill in a response, and we categorized those, and about a third of that third were about taxes. And most of those, as you would suppose, were not saying, I want my taxes increased. They were saying, taxes are too much, and be more frugal. There was a relatively large drop off to the second place one, which was about 1 in 10 then had comments about their government assistance programs, health and human services programs for the most part. Well, to wrap up, I'm not going to tell you what the numbers really mean, because I think that's up to you to interpret and to put your own values and judgments on this. But the numbers sort of suggest that your residents, as viewed by this representative sample, pretty much like what they've got at this point in time. Over half of the folks view, most of them are viewed as at least somewhat important by relatively large majorities, and toward the top by very large majorities. There is, however, a reluctance to increase spending or to decrease spending. So there was, as you saw on there was that big chunk who wanted to keep spending kind of in the middle. So there's no sort of popular mandate saying, oh, this program or this group of programs we really would like to see a lot of money going up or a lot of money going down, with just a very few exceptions on that. Suggesting the status quo is pretty much acceptable to the folks who responded to the survey. The challenge that I guess I'd suggest is not a new one. It's an age-old problem and this is what you get paid, the not so big bucks to sit in these chairs to make these decisions, how to provide quality services that are deemed important by your residents in in a difficult physical environment. How to be fiscally prudent and maximize what you can do to these services that are generally supported by the population.
Any questions? There's a lot of detail that's in the report. I obviously encourage you to spend some time at it, some good information. Any questions right now for either Jim or Pete? And if not, we thank you very much, and I'll return for the remainder of your report. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Pete. Appreciate your help, and Kristen Ziliak as well from the Administrator's Office. So this is a good segue into the next very brief update, which is the strategic planning update. This is and Pete Kling kind of outlined what the history was back in March of 2012, about a month before the current board took office. The County Board of Supervisors approved a strategic plan with the 6 priority areas identified as community development, protecting at-risk population, economic development, financial health, transportation, public safety, and criminal justice. As I've said before, the strategic plan is a living document. It needs to be revisited regularly. I heard Bob Meyer say that they look at theirs on a formal basis every 3 years. Well, that's good. We're going to continue to look at our strategic plan probably a little more than that, probably annually at least, or maybe every other year. But it's a document that needs to maintain its relevance. And so in January, we conducted this survey with the board's blessing to try to garner information from the residents of St. Croix County as to, where are we? Where do things stand in terms of our board's priorities, and where are we putting our dollars in terms of budgeting? So what we've tried to do as a staff is take those priority areas identified by the board and taking the information from the survey, how are we going to implement, how are we going to work this into the overall work plan of the county? If you recall, the original strategic plan had over 100 what I would call work tasks attached to it. And those are departmental work goals. And so the staff over the past several months have gone through each and every one of those work goals and have tried to update it, identify whether or not the task had been completed, where things stood, did it need to be modified. Along with that, taking the information from the survey, the citizen survey, we identified 4 strategic initiatives which the administration and the strategic planning work group feel address the results of the citizen survey. And those are continuous improvement, growth management, safety and health, and outreach, both internal and external. And so what you see here is a grid showing the priority areas along with the strategic initiatives, and this plays directly into our pay-for-performance system. And so when employees are working through their pay-for-performance goals with their department supervisors and directors, they will identify how their work goals tie directly back to the board's strategic plan, the 6 priority areas, and the 4 strategic initiatives. So it's all tied together. And so that's the way that we try to make sure that the work that's being performed at the department level is meeting the board's key priorities and strategic initiatives. So the question is, do our strategic initiatives, which we've identified, reflect resident feedback? We feel they do. We heard loud and clear about the level of expenditures, and I think Jim hit that pretty well. And so our goal, our challenge at the county is to try to continue to improve service delivery, but responsibly use county tax dollars by trying to make our operations more efficient through streamlining and elimination of waste. I won't go through all these, but we feel that the initiatives which we've identified will go towards addressing the majority of the information that was found in the results of the citizen survey. As we put together the 2014 budget, we will try to address the budgets we bring before you in the next month at your committee level, and then in November as a board, how those budgets address the strategic initiatives, taking the information from the citizen survey. So it's a fluid process. You know, it's tied directly into our budgeting. It's tied into our strategic planning as well as our performance evaluation systems. Any questions from the board? If not, we will continue to move on then. The next item on the agenda is a capital projects update. And again, I'm going to move through this fairly quickly. Stop me if you have questions as we move through it. You've seen a lot of this before. The 3 capital projects, I'm just going to fly through this because you've seen it. Where do things stand? RFP 3 for the construction of the expansion of the 911 EOC. The award to Keller Construction is pending. We're still working through a couple legal insurance-related questions regarding that contract, but we believe it will be executed very soon, hopefully this week. And we do not want to hold up this project either with issuing another RFP for construction, because we only had one responsible bidder. In discussions with the staff, we do not want to delay the project. We want to proceed with the project, execute a contract with Keller Construction, and begin work this month to hit our goal of trying to complete the center by January of 14. Yes?
And going back to that original bidder on the 911 center,
Yep.
and correct me if I'm wrong, and Casey, I think, is still here. There was a competition in every area with the subcontractors.
Yes. If you look at this slide here, the award is pending. There were 2 responses. This is the general contractor. There were competitive bids from all the subs, and I think that's what Supervisor Osnes is getting to. The subcontractor selection process was competitive, and there were several competing bids for the various trades involved in the project. And as I pointed out, equipment failure concerns with any delay. This project can't be delayed, needs to proceed. The equipment is on life support, and we just need to keep things moving. We feel the bid that has been received and is pending with Keller Construction is very competitive. If we can just iron out a couple remaining issues, which are not big issues. Consolidation of the St. Croix and Pierce County government 911 centers, which we've heard about. The scope of the study has been finalized with PSC Alliance, which is the consulting firm which will complete the merger study. Final report should be completed by December of 13. There's a work group that's been established, myself, the sheriff or his delegate, Casey Swetlick, and then our counterparts at Pierce County. Second project of vacating Health and Human Services. You've seen this plan of action before. The first plank is the purchase of the former county market building, the new St. Croix County Government Services Center, 1.28 million. That closing will take place on Friday of this week. The plan then is to continue relocation once that facility is built out, relocate the Health and Human Services departments, including ADRC and the Veteran Service Office, to the new St. Croix County Government Services Center in New Richmond. As I've said before, that will leave approximately 20 staff in the Baldwin facility once the relocation, or once the FSA, the Federal Service Agency, relocates out of the facility at the end of the year. There will be approximately 20 staff left in the building. So the administration committee this month, or last month, took up this issue at their committee meeting and authorized the administrator to begin marketing of the Baldwin Ag Center and bring forward a recommendation back to the county board in terms of any and all offers made on the facility. And then continued review of any expansion plans for the government center in Hudson. You heard the judges earlier in their report. Sooner or later, we don't know exactly when, but we'll have pressure for a fifth judge. We're already over, I think the judge said we're at 4.3. So that pressure will continue to grow as St. Croix County grows. So we need to be prepared, I would say in the 5 to 10 year time frame as to how to address the court expansion needs in St. Croix County. The former purchase of the county market building, as I said, will, hang on, Travis. I'll just get through this slide. The closing is scheduled for Friday. Yeah.
From my understanding, the backup 911 center is in the Baldwin facility. How much is it going to cost us to replace that aspect of the building?
We don't have cost estimates of what it would be to replace the backup EOC and the backup 911. They do not occupy much space in the Baldwin Center, the Baldwin Ag Center. They don't. Their footprint is not large.
Well, the footprint's not large, but how much would the equipment part, how much would that cost us? That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, Casey is here, but that equipment will, Casey, do you want to try to address that question about the equipment? I think that microphone, we did replace the battery.
I don't think it worked.
Oh. Okay. Bad battery.
If I understand your question, it's relating to the infrastructure for a backup 911 center. Part of our Phase 2 operation will be replacing all that with your support, and we'll go network. So we'll be able to actually access our system through a network connection versus a transmission line antenna connection, tower connection that we have currently right now in Baldwin. That big tower, it's just a pass-through tower that's dark, and we only light it up when we have to activate it. So our infrastructure replacement will allow us the ability to control our 911 system anywhere through a network connection. So all we need is network access.
Would that actually, that type of network access actually make the tower in New Richmond kind of obsolete also?
No, it's just to access the system. We certainly still need our tower locations that are currently part of our infrastructure and our footprint. Access into that now is no longer transmission line, it's now network. So we'll do it all via the network. Good question. I'm glad I dressed up.
I don't recognize you with a tie on. Do you foresee any need to add extra money to our bonding, and that's going to go down to Pat too, for the backup center and the EOC that we should be looking at?
Well, I don't quite know how the funding will come for county market, whether that will be through bonding or through the proceeds from the sale of the property. But there will certainly need to be a component related to the backup that will cost something.
Right.
And I'm in communication with Pat to explain what that cost would be, especially being sensitive to this merger slide that you had a few slides ago with Pierce County. If there is a merger that we'll move forward on, we need to not only be concerned about the needs of just St. Croix, but also Pierce. So the two folding chairs and a table that we have right now in Baldwin really wouldn't
Aren't going to cut it.
be appropriate.
So right now, or Pat, maybe that goes back to you, is there a need to even look at money for that with the bonding that's going to be coming
Yes.
up shortly?
There will be.
And there's a chance that we'd be going ahead with the bonding before we even decide what we're going to do after the survey comes back though, correct?
The citizen survey?
No, from the PSC.
Oh, the study.
Are we going to have to decide what we're going to do, one way or the other, with the backup?
It'll have to be timed out appropriately in terms of when the county issues the bond in 2014. It'll take place in 2014. Hopefully, we'll have the results of the merger study completed by November, December of this year. And so by the time the county is faced with the bonding, which will need to take place to continue to fund the capital projects as outlined, we will have financial information from the study as to what it will take if the two county boards decide to merge.
So it's still on the front burner as we talk.
So it's on the front burner, and Casey's not going to let me let that slide, believe me. And I'm just saying that facetiously. It's very important. We're going to continue to juggle those balls, but make sure that the timing of the bond issue in 2014 will include that. Most definitely. Mhm. The county market, staff is saying, Pat, we can't continue to refer to it as the county market. So we're going to start referring to it as the St. Croix County Government Services Center, because it's not just HHS. There will be county services other than HHS in the facility, and so it needs to be inclusive of the fact that we're providing important, vital government services, county services out of the facility, and so the name should reflect that. Yes, Travis?
I guess this goes back to the Ag Center stuff, but is there a reason why we're moving the people from the Ag Center to Hudson versus into the Government Services Center, which would actually be closer to where the farmers are, if we're going to move them completely? Why not keep them in at least part of the farming district?
Well, part of the reason is because the staff that will be remaining in the Baldwin Ag Center are community development staff members, land and water conservation, which is part of community development, the parks employees that are housed in the Baldwin Ag Center are community development staff members. And so to co-join the remaining staff people in the Ag Center into the space that will be vacated by the ADRC offices, which are part of the Human Services Department. They will be co-located with the rest of their department in New Richmond. And so there is a little bit of shuffling going on, but it is to try to attain efficiencies within departments that are currently split into different locations. Now, the discussion, I'm very sensitive to the discussion that took place earlier from a member of our citizenry, Shar, and I spoke to her during a break, and what I'm going to pledge to do is to reach out to her and anyone else that she would like to invite to a meeting so we can discuss concerns that she raised this morning. You know, potentially there's, you know, the farm, the FSA offices, NRCS, I don't know where they're going to be located. They're currently going through a process to determine where their offices will be located. I can't say for certain that they'll be located in Baldwin either, although what I'm hearing is that they most likely will be located in Baldwin. Now, there's the possibility that we could make sure that if there are staff people assigned in the Land and Water Division that works closely with farmers, that maybe a presence using the row work concept where we're not working in our offices 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week. We're not working in our office, we're working where our clients are. That same concept could apply towards those staff members that work closely with the farm community, and those people needing those services. Maybe there still will be a presence in Baldwin remotely. And so I think we need to have that dialogue. I need to have that dialogue with Shar, and I've gotten a couple other calls, I'm sure you have, as board members. Got a couple letters of the citizens that are expressing that concern, and I will continue to reach out and try to bring that component of discussion to the table before a decision is made. Ultimately, it's up to the county board, although the administration committee oversees property and makes recommendations, that it's ultimately up to the county board to decide where the Baldwin Ag Center fits into our overall inventory of buildings and assets. It'll ultimately be up to the county board to decide that. Yes, Dwayne?
Well, this last comment you made, ultimately be left to the county board to make that decision. It seems like we're moving along pretty quickly without the county board making any decisions here, Pat.
Well, the administration committee, as I said, unanimously approved the marketing of the facility, but it's ultimately up to the county board to decide whether or not to sell, or not to sell, or to buy or not to buy. And that decision can't be made without the board.
Now, one other comment, the lady that spoke earlier, and you said maybe you're going to have a meeting with her and some others. I would like to throw in the village president of Baldwin and their administrator as well.
Sure.
That should be included in this, definitely.
Yep. Yep. So, let's see, St. Croix, the interior build-out of the county market, there will be costs associated with that. We don't know what those will be exactly at this point. We're going through a process of determining the programming and space needs for the Health and Human Services Department, the Aging and Disability Resource Center, and the Veteran Service Office. If there is a component of the backup EOC and 911 along with that, and developing an overall program space needs for the new county government services facility. As I said, we will try to continue to implement ROW into our planning and design, and so workspaces will not, some workspaces will resemble traditional office cubicle type space arrangements. There may be also remote access type offices. The staff has looked at and will continue to look at other facilities that have been designed with the row concept in mind, where work is more portable. And so that every single staff person will not have a cubicle or a traditional four-walled office. And so the building eventually may look different than what we're all accustomed to seeing when we walk into a traditional type office building. The staff is also looking at the HVAC, whether or not any upgrades would need to be made to that. We have our IT department looking at what the IT needs will be, and also looking at parking lot and landscaping issues, if there will be any. Yes?
Going back to the county market building.
Yep.
What we purchased up there basically is the building and the parking lot. It didn't have anything to do with the lots to the north or to the west towards
Correct.
freeway, right? You and I.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We have an option with those?
No. Well, I mean, we didn't, it's not an option that was part of any purchase agreement, but if there's, the schedule, 3 months of planning and design work, and 6 months of construction, tentative. Staff relocation, should underline the word, of June of 2014 into the facility. The Baldwin site, here again, to sell or not to sell, the administration committee has authorized the listing of the facility. Any and all offers will be forwarded to the board with a resolution whether or not to sell. And all offers to sell would be contingent on board approval. The 2014 bonding, which we talked about a little bit, the auction proceeds of 3.3 will be applied towards the capital infrastructure and capital needs, along with a bonding in 2014 to include the 911 infrastructure, which Supervisor Osnes asked about, and any other capital costs which are not covered by the sale proceeds. Any sale of the Baldwin facility could offset, pending board approval, any capital costs could offset the total bonding required in 2014. Expenditures to date hasn't been much. There has been some activity. The 911 expansion phase 1, the earnest money that was needed to be applied towards the purchase of the former county market, and the eventual cleanup of the New Richmond site. We had to do some environmental studies on the property. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any update concerning the nursing home, how that process is going?
Yes, we received, I wish Tabitha was here, she received a letter from the state saying that our property incentive application had not been, it was not approved and it wasn't disapproved. It was approved with some conditions. And those conditions will need to be reviewed by the Health and Human Services Board at their next meeting. I don't have a copy of the letter in front of me, we just received it, but it was, I would say, a lukewarm response towards approval of what was ultimately, in my view, acceptable in terms of a true property incentive award. It was an award with conditions, which I don't know. The Health and Human Services Board will take this up at their next meeting, but I would say it would be, we may be hard pressed to recommend approval of the property incentive application with those types of conditions. If not, any other questions, Mr. Chairman, we could move into the next portion of the meeting.
Yeah, let's hold
Yes.
one portion, let's take the business item and
Yep,
come back.
okay.
Board members, we have one business item in front of us this morning. This is a resolution that is presented for our consideration. This is a resolution that is coming to us from the Health and Human Services Committee. It's a resolution supporting Wisconsin County's collaborative statutory language for health and human services programs. Chair would entertain a motion. Motion from Supervisor Osnes, second from Supervisor Schrottner. Discussion. Anyone from Health and Human Services Committee wish to speak to the resolution? Everyone is clear? Are you prepared to vote? Supervisors, proceed to vote on the resolution supporting Wisconsin County's collaborative statutory language for health and human services programs. And the resolution is approved on a vote of 14-1. Administrator Thompson, let's return now to the final presentation and recognition this morning. And this will be the retirement of Corporation Counsel, and I turn it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have never seen Don smile so much. When he came in this morning, he had the biggest smile on his face. I've never seen it. And, you know, to this morning's meeting, I don't know if, I'm sure you all sensed it. I certainly did. It was very very nostalgic when we talk about, you know, we hear from the judges and we talk about our former county board chair, Norman Ole Anderson, and we heard from a lot of the people that worked closely with him. And then we're also going to be talking about an employee that has worked for St. Croix County for over 20 years who is going to be retiring today. And so in appreciation for what Don Gillen has meant to St. Croix County, we have a few pictures that we just want to just fly through. And it's all in good taste, and we wanted to keep this, you know, very light and not melancholy. And anyway, and we sent a notice out to department employees and managers and supervisors. Some of them are here, and I think Don, maybe even some of your family are here. But this is Don back in his early days. And Don was quite a golfer, and I think he still is a golfer. You should have been with the Harlem Globetrotters too, Don, the way you can spin the ball. Anyway, Don was employed with St. Croix County from 1990 through 2013. Why would Don ever want to leave? The staff had a Halloween party. It was in conjunction with ADRC, and those of you that are supervisors here know that the county departments, I'd say the employees that work here at St. Croix County, they work hard and they play hard. And when they want to let their hair down a little bit and have relaxation a little bit at work, they do it in good taste. And so the question remains, Don, why would you ever want to leave this? Your quality staff, Kathy and Nicole. We have Liz Roll. I think Liz is here. Liz is the newest member of the staff. In fact, she's so new, we didn't have any pictures of her in the archives, but she probably wouldn't want to dress up like this anyway. But Liz Roll has been the newest addition to the staff, and so I said I wish we could have photocropped Liz Roll in there. But Kathy and Nicole worked closely with Don over the years, and I'm sure they're going to miss you, Don, as we all will. And the respectful coworkers in the administration staff, we're all going to miss you. And professional coworkers, our county clerk, yes, and her assistant, and Brad, the director of ADRC, just down the hall.
We had ugly sweater contests the first year I was here at Christmas time, and I think Brad won, and I think Cindy was a close second. We couldn't get Don to wear a sweater, though, I don't think, so we don't have a picture of him. But and Packer fans, always. And Don even has a tie, a Packer tie, and those of you that know Don, he has a tie for every occasion. In fact, when he told me he was going to be retiring, I said, I want to buy some of your ties, Don. But, he had a tie for every day. Competitive spirit, of course, in the office, and always the center of attention, Don. Your chair will miss you. I'd say we got our money's worth out of that chair. So that chair will not be moving to New Richmond when we move some of the furniture. But anyway, that's all I had, Don. As administrator here, I've worked with you the 2.5 years I've been here as assistant corporation counsel, and then over the past year as corporation counsel. And you've been a joy to work with. You bring a lot to the table, not only as a professional attorney, but your attitude, your spirit of cooperation has been first and foremost. Whenever we've asked Don to help out in any area, he has been able to step up and help out. And if he didn't have the answer, which sometimes lawyers don't have, rather than giving you, an answer that isn't totally accurate, Don will do the research, or he'll have someone do the research and get you the right answer. So we've been represented very well as a board, as a county, legally by Don Gillen. And so whoever is found to replace you, Don, they have big shoes to fill and a pretty crappy looking chair. So I don't know if you want to say anything, Don. Otherwise, I'm going to open it up to any staff, any employees that want to say anything. We have refreshments here as well. We hope you can stick around a little bit and wish Don the best. I don't know, any brave souls out there that want to say anything about Don?
I just want to say I did make that putt too, as I recall.
Don, microphone.
In that picture.
You did make what?
Oh, I did make that putt in the picture, as I recall.
Supervisor Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don, not only as a county board member, but also on the Board of Adjustments, I worked with you many times, and I just have the utmost respect for you, and you'll be greatly missed. Thanks for your service.
Mr. Chairman, I almost forgot. We have a plaque that I'd like to present to Don. It's signed by the board chair and by the county administrator. It's a certificate presented to Don Gillen in grateful appreciation for his many years of loyal and dedicated service to St. Croix County. Our sincere gratitude is extended to you this 3rd day of September 2013.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Don, we appreciate your service. We'll miss you. Don't be a stranger.
Thanks a lot.
A couple of quick items. Roger Larson has been collecting funds for a refreshment pool. Have you gotten all you need? Anyone you need to put the arm on?
I got a few names, but I'll catch them later.
Okay.
So we're okay.
So if you haven't paid your $10 to Roger, replenish the refreshment fund. Second of all, at your places this morning were nice little name badges. I think it's appropriate that we have those. Those are intended not as security badges, and they aren't. They do not replace your security badge, but they are intended for times when you are out at a meeting, you're representing the board at some function, you're someplace where it would be appropriate to have a name badge on. I think these are long overdue, and I appreciate now finally getting them in our hands. They're Class C, they use the county logo, and they look professional. So with that, board members, our agenda is concluded, and we are adjourned.